The category is What the Trans, Darling?
Hello, Liz Truss is a nightmare. Welcome to What the Trans.
What the Trans? Hello.
Hey, so at time of recording, it is International Day against homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. Or, as the acronym says, Ida Hobbit.
Indeed. It's like, I did wonder, is that like a hobbit from Idaho or something?
I hope so.
Mm.
I really hope so. I mean, as a community, we do love our acronyms, and I especially love that one because Ida Hobbit, it just rolls off the tongue.
It's nice, isn't it?
So yes, Liz Truss is a nightmare, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying, but she's especially been a nightmare today because she put out a tweet in reference to Ida Hobbit, which is bold, considering that she has said some pretty terrifying fucking things about what she intends for trans equality, and yeah, the sheer fucking gall of it when the only LGBT-related organisations she follows are two actual hate groups, the LGBT Alliance and Transgender Trend, and the LGBT Conservatives, who, at least to their credit, have finally spoken up now and said that maybe what Liz Truss is planning is a bit shitty. But yeah, what's your take on Liz Truss affirming her commitment to fight transphobia?
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's hilarious, isn't it? As you say, the fucking audacity of her in particular. And, you know, obviously most Tories, but her in particular saying, coming out against biphobia, homophobia, and transphobia. And it's like, what the fuck? Do you even know what those things are, Liz? Do you have a working definition? What is this? What timeline is this? And it's just lip service, isn't it? It's like someone on the social media team has said, oh, Liz, listen, gotta be honest, lots of people in the LGBT community are super concerned about some of the things that you've said. So here, do this completely meaningless tweet on a particular day to try and ameliorate some suspicion, which kind of isn't really working because we're talking about it right now. Obviously, that tweet is not for people like you and I who are already looking upon the Conservative Party with a certain amount of disdain, but it is for people who are like, yeah, look, see, the Tories are all over the gay rights thing. They're tweeting about it now. And it's like, oh, okay, all right, fine.
Yeah, but in more me-centric news...
I was going to say, you've had a fun week, haven't you?
Yeah, I wrote a piece that got published on iNews. There'll be a link in the description. It's probably not going to be that unfamiliar to people who grew up in the 90s as a closeted trans person. I go into all of the reasons why basically I grew up in a TERF paradise, or the paradise of TERFs want to impose on us, otherwise known as the 1990s in North Yorkshire. Yep. And it didn't work out for me. It wasn't great. And how I'm a bit nervous about Liz Truss bringing those times back. So obviously, the second it went out, pretty much every TERF in the UK suddenly had an opinion on my face. I quite like my face. I mean, you know, if I had some money, I might get some work done here or there. But on the level, as conceptually, I am on board with my face. But they seem to have many objections to it. But I did learn one thing.
Which was?
That they can't fucking touch me anymore. And the best thing I did all of that time was when the LGBT Alliance themselves tweeted at me saying, you know, I can't remember exactly what they said, but it's something like, your article is defamation or something, trying to imply we're going to sue you. And I responded with, my name is Michelle O'Toole. I am a transgender woman. You can't scare me. And I meant it, and it was true. So I guess on Ida Hobbit today, I guess I want to put out the message that the best thing you can do in the face of transphobia is stand up and say who you are with no shame. And that really fucks them off.
I mean, yes. I mean, just to say it's not an option for absolutely everybody. I don't think we should be widely...
I mean, obviously not people who are in the closet or whatever, but like, I mean, in some way, basically standing up without shame and being yourself in the face of that is something that I'm very much behind, because honestly, it felt fucking great to say that directly to LGBT Alliance / Anne Sinnott, who is basically the LGBT Alliance, but sat in a flat somewhere.
Yeah, I get it. The kind of, you know, what exactly are you guys going to do sort of thing. But, you know, this was precipitated by you writing an article and having it published in a national newspaper. And so there's a certain there is a conversation about the privilege of who gets to do that and blah, blah, blah. And that's, not to say that it wasn't a good article, because it absolutely was, and it said a bunch of stuff. And obviously you and I growing up at more or less the same time in, again, in the north of England, there's a lot of crossover in the experience. And so I read that and went like, wow, this is very close to home, because of course it was. But not everybody is going to be absolutely able to stand up and face them in quite the same way, because some people are going to be in more precarious situations. And
Oh, absolutely. But I took the shots that I had.
Indeed.
I don't want people to suddenly be like, oh, I couldn't get a thing in the whatever for whatever reason, therefore I'm not doing a thing. Just, this is something that is related to what I do with the podcast. I communicate stuff.
Indeed.
Not very well, because the copy editor probably had a field day with my bad grammared stuff, although I was helped out considerably by a bunch of friends who really know their English. So thank you, friends. Love you all. But yeah, you're right. I think what I'm trying to say is, in some way, doesn't matter how small it is, doesn't even matter if it never leaves your brain, just being like, fuck you, I am this and I love it.
Yeah.
On some level is enough. Personally, I had an inner turf in my head dictating what I wore, and I only really realised this in the last week. And I was always picking more conservative clothes to try and sort of appease the inner turf in my head. But then seeing the actual turfs in the world going on at me, no matter what I did, I was just like, fuck it. So I went online and I bought a whole bunch of pretty dresses, because I like a pretty dress, Ash.
Absolutely. I have a number of pretty dresses, and you sent me some photographs and you look fabulous, darling. So absolutely. And why the hell shouldn't we do that, frankly? These people are deliberately and maliciously trying to make us feel bad, make us, have a difficult time, etc. And so to just deliberately say, nah, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to, wear something in floral print and make a cake, which has been...
That has been your life recently.
Yes, well, not all of it, but that's a discussion for a whole other time, I suspect. Yeah, and absolutely, and well done on writing that article, obviously, because as I say, I read it and it was great. It said what it needed to say, and it is sickening beyond belief that just for writing an article with nothing particularly extreme in it and just a number of statements of fact in terms of a personal experience, that in itself is enough to turn you into a target for some people.
They can try. Honestly, a year ago, it might have really got to me, but now, after all the work we've done here and all the time I've definitely spent debunking stuff and looking into their ridiculous ideology, it's just... I have no respect for them. And the only people that can hurt me are people I respect.
It's true. That's actually a really solid way of looking at it, I think. But they are just so laughably inconsistent and unhinged, really, that it's like, okay, yeah, you guys, fine, whatever. But I'm a woman. You guys die mad about it. Thanks. Bye.
Pretty much. And obviously, me liking pretty dresses does not make me a woman. Being a woman does not mean you have to, obviously. But
Indeed.
I happen to be a woman who likes a pretty dress. And for some reason, I was sort of holding myself back from that because I was terrified of them going oh, you're a fetishist who gets off on wearing dresses, where the truth is, the closest I got to any kind of getting off was looking in the mirror and being fuck me. I actually like how I look in this. Empire line, tea dresses... That's my jam. I look great in those. I'm going to buy more of these. This is going to be my look now. So, you know what? I came out of it a lot happier in myself, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting Graham Linehan to, bash my door down and beat me to death. But thankfully, he was suspended on Twitter this week, so I don't even know if he saw it.
Yeah.
So that made life easier. But anyway, enough about me and the thing. You're going to be going on to some hollybobs in June. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean...
I promise I'll never refer to them as hollybobs ever again.
Yeah, please don't. Literally ever.
That is a terrible word. I picked that off of somebody I used to work with. It's a bad habit.
But yes, I think really saying I'm going on holiday is a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? So I'm taking a break from the podcast. Yes, I will be away for some weeks, and there are a lot of reasons for that. Most of which, if I was talking to an actual employer, I would say, oh, personal reasons. And there's that, and there's a few things going on in the background of the podcast that are changing and shifting around. And But also just for me and in my life, things are at a point where I need to take a step back from a couple of my commitments because I've got some other things to sort out. And I am going to do that, and then I'm going to see how I feel, essentially. So yes, sorry everybody, I won't be joining Michelle on the recordings for the next few weeks, but I am quite certain that the podcast will absolutely be steaming along in my absence, possibly with some extremely sexy and cool guest presenters.
I mean, filling your seat, Ash, is not going to be easy, because you are half the show. The show is the dynamic with us and the work we do, and without you around, it's going to be a very, very different time, but go get rested up, go deal with some stuff.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I would like to announce that we have a whole month of Pride-themed episodes. The aim of the next 4 episodes after the next one, which is our Cis Ally special, which I will talk about a little bit at the end, is to try and replace Prides as much as we can. So for 4 episodes in June, we are going to have a bunch of different Pride-themed episodes. And as amazing as they all are, I'm going to miss the fuck out of you doing this show, and I mean that.
Well, I know, I do appreciate you saying that, but, you know...
Oh, please don't take that as me pressurising you to stick around. You got stuff to do, and I respect that. Go and do the things.
So, yes, hopefully I will speak to you all soon, and everybody stay safe, look after yourselves and each other, and I think Michelle and I have the rest of the podcast to do.
Yeah, let's do some news. Let's do some terrible news, and... The news starts off terrible, really bad, but then it gets kind of better, but not really. That's my review.
That's good. And so that concludes our terrible news segment. Now we're now going to move on to the... No. We do have a couple of stories that we're going to talk about. And to start with, unfortunately, we do have some rather sad news from the US. Aimee Stephens, who you may remember as the trans woman who is at the centre of American trans people's fight for equality, has sadly passed away at the age of 59. As we have previously covered, Stephens was fired from the funeral home where she worked upon coming out as a transgender woman back in 2013, and she pursued legal action against her former employer as she claimed, correctly in our opinion, that her dismissal was due to her seeking to wear the women's uniform at the funeral home where she worked, and according to her lawyers, if she had been assigned female at birth, this never would have been an issue. That case made its way to the US Supreme Court last year and does have the potential to permanently define discrimination under the sex characteristic as including prejudice against transgender people based on sexist views and policies on what a person with a penis or a vagina should be able to do. The whole case hinged on the idea that the sex discrimination clause that already exists in American law does in fact cover transgender people. That's the bedrock of the case. So needless to say, Stephens has been incredibly brave, determined, and a bit of a hero because for the last 7 years of her life, she has sought justice for the injustice that she has faced, but also her work could have a long-lasting benefit on trans rights in the United States. Now, the judgment from her case is still being deliberated by the judges, and so therefore the case will continue. But please do keep Stephens in your thoughts and memories, as she is going to go down in history as the person who, potentially, liberated trans people and possibly made sure US transgender people's rights are protected. But we shall have to see how that court case goes once the verdict actually does emerge. But it's very sad that she will not be around to see it. So, R.I.P. Aimee Stephens.
Yeah, rest in power, Aimee, and thank you. I don't think she was necessarily listening to the podcast before.
Probably not.
Maybe they did get podcasts wherever she is. And if she's listening, thank you.
The case that she started is still kind of percolating, and it will be addressed in some way, and hopefully the result that Stephens was fighting for will be the one that we see. No way to know that just yet.
Yeah, let's get back to some more predictable news. It is very similar to the kind of things we have done before. The Times and the Daily Mail have both made the claim that transgender women are 5 times more likely to commit sexual assaults in women's prisons than cisgender women. But as per usual, we looked at the numbers, and the truth is the Times kind of lied, and the Daily Mail absolutely fucking lied.
Shocker.
I mean, I know, right? I mean, this is the first time we've
definitely
ever found the Daily Mail in a lie.
Good heavens, I'm astonished.
To start with the Times, in their piece titled 7 Sex Attacks in Women's Jails by Transgender Convicts, They came out on the 11th of May. They said that transgender prisoners are 5 times more likely to carry out sex attacks on inmates at women's jails than other prisoners are. Official figures show male prisoners who were transferred to women's jails during gender reassignment and women inmates who are transitioning committed 7 of the 124 sex acts recorded between 2010 and 2018. You see how they mixed up male and woman and stuff like that. That does leave a certain impression. And to further cement that impression, they went on to offer a quote from Nicola Williams, the director of transphobic hate group Fair Play for Women, who made the usual claims that putting quote-unquote males in women's prisons was a terrible idea because trans women are really men who love sexually assaulting women.
Every single one of us.
Yes, every single one of us.
We are uniquely a threat in this regard. Fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. But the Daily Mail, however, went one step further, saying although trans women make up about 1% of the 3,600 female jail population, they are to blame for 5.6% of sexual assaults there. So, alarming stuff. According to the Daily Mail, it sure does sound like trans women are indeed 5 times more likely to commit sexual assaults in prisons. But as per fucking usual, the facts of the matter have been fudged to fit into a long-established transphobic and shitty media narrative. So both of these stories came from a question asked by Labour Party peer Baroness McDonough, who asked the Ministry of Justice how many sexual assaults have been carried out by trans prisoners against women prisoners and prison officers in prisons. Really badly worded question.
It is, isn't it? It's trying to be thorough, so I see why it's worded this way, but yeah, it's not like, you know...
It doesn't translate well to my particular spoken style, but I'll persevere.
You shall, yes, struggle through.
I will struggle through. So she was asking how many sexual assaults have been carried out by trans prisoners against women prisoners and prison officers in prisons in each year since 2010, in which prisons any such assaults took place, and in each case, what action was taken against the perpetrator. Representing the Ministry of Justice, Lorne Keane of Ely responded with, since 2010, out of the 122 sexual assaults that occurred in the female estate, a total of 5 of those were sexual assaults against females in custody perpetrated by transgender individuals. So, did you notice anything there? Because we sure as shit did. It was not stated anywhere that the perpetrators were transgender women. This answer was later updated with the 2 sexual assaults committed by transgender woman Karen White, who we all may know from any social media we follow that TERFs have access to, because we all seem to get a picture of her face sent to us every fucking week. But Karen White's assaults brought that number up to 7. But there is no evidence anywhere that the other 5 assaults were committed by transgender women. But that did not stop the Daily Mail saying so anyway. To the Times' very limited credit, they did clarify this point by reporting that women's prisons had 34 transgender inmates in April 2018, 30 of whom were born female. Prison service statistics do not include those prisoners born male who have already legally changed sex. But then they still willingly misled their readers in their report by including a big fat quote from the director of a transphobic hate group who seemingly presumed that all of the assaults were committed by transgender women, regardless as to what was actually said in the House of Lords. Just gonna put that out there. Maybe don't include quotes from people who are lying in your report. Just saying. But at least they got the facts kind of right by saying that the gender identity of the perpetrators was not known, whereas the Daily Mail just straight up said that all 7 assaults were committed by transgender women. This comes after wet-headed Thunderbird puppet and former Conservative Prisons Minister Rory Stewart made the astonishing claim that he had heard of situations of male prisoners self-identifying as females then raping staff. And this also got carried in the Daily Mail and the Telegraph, despite the fact that a prison service spokesperson said, "We have no record of this happening. Strict safeguards are in place to manage transgender prisoners whilst protecting our staff and other inmates." Because we are clearly a danger to prison staff and other inmates. Brilliant. This was also reaffirmed by Lord Keane of Ely in his answer to Baroness McDonough, who said there have been no reported incidents of any type of sexual assault against prison officers by transgender prisoners. At the time of his bizarre announcement, Rory Stewart was running as an independent candidate in the London mayoral election. And if we had to guess as to why he told this flat-out lie, it was probably because he was stuck in 3rd place as an independent candidate against a Conservative and an incredibly popular Labour mayor. And if you want to get exposure in the right-wing transphobic press, all you have to do is make up a lie about trans women assaulting cis women. That's all you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, if this was his plan, it didn't work because he went on to drop out of the race claiming that COVID-19 had made it impossible to campaign. Good fucking riddance. That is the only good thing that has come from this pandemic. Obviously, the pandemic is awful, but there is one silver lining. Rory is gone. And good fucking riddance. Go work at your terrible think tank. Go write your shitty book that no one will buy. Fuck off forever. So what to take from this? Not a lot really, except the usual, that the press in the UK is broken. They can monster a community with no repercussions, and they can twist stories or outright lie with no consequences. What do you think of this, Ashleigh? I think I can predict what your response is going to be, but do let us know.
You almost certainly can, and I'm sure the listeners can as well. So this is, as you pointed out in the segment, this is more of the same, isn't it? This is the same kind of misleading, deliberately obfuscatory kind of, check me out, obfuscatory, coverage, which is actually, rather than intended to provide some, actual news, it is intended to kind of mislead its readers, potentially in a political way or whatever, but you get your readers to think along a particular line and they will swallow every bloody thing you say, which is the real problem with Daily Mail readers, because some of the stories are just so out there and like there's literally no way this could possibly be true, but yet it runs and there are no repercussions and it's just ridiculous. Like, we didn't even have to make any phone calls for this one. We established that this thing was bollocks just by looking through statements that were made in the same meeting.
Yeah, I was thinking this is going to take some research. I was going to have to go and dig out a load of stuff from the Ministry of Justice, go look through a whole bunch of 80-page PDFs. But no, all I did was go on the Parliament website, look up the question that was asked and read the answer and then copy and paste it into this document. And all the other stuff I did was just a complete waste of time because it was all there. I was looking through prison numbers from PDFs I half remembered reading 2 years ago and stuff, just being all right, I need to find out how many trans prisoners there are. I need to find out how many trans men, how many trans women, how many non-binary people. I want to try and figure out a rough number of how many have gone through a case conference to get their legal gender changed through the GRA or whatever. Turned out I did about 4 hours of that and it was a complete waste of time because when I got to the actual question that was asked and was oh, it's all there. And they clearly read that. They clearly read this question and then just came up with a whole bunch of fucking lies. But I think the kicker is, with the Rory Stewart angle, because he's a piece of work.
He is, yeah. He seems to have had a very, very interesting life. So I saw him on Have I Got News For You a little while ago, which, kind of tells you everything to know where I'm at. No, but... There was just David Mitchell, who was hosting on that occasion, was getting a certain amount of mileage about suggesting that Rory Stewart could well have previously been a spy, which is an interesting interpretation. It's certainly possible, though, given the kind of diplomatic background and the number of languages that he speaks. But yes, there is a specific point about Rory Stewart and, making a comment on something to do with the prison estate, isn't there?
Yeah, because apparently he learned of this thing that never fucking happened whilst he was the Minister for Prisons in the Conservative government. And the only thing I could think was, if he was the Minister for Prisons, why didn't he say a single thing about this at the time or do anything about it?
If it was such a huge problem.
Yeah, if he was so fucking concerned, he was in charge.
You had responsibility for this, Rory. If it was such a huge problem, why only bring it up now when that position is no longer yours? So, yes, that's interesting, isn't it? I'm sure there's absolutely nothing that we could read into that.
Yeah, it's pretty clear what he was doing. And there's a reason why he's running as an independent, because...
Was running as an independent.
Was running as an independent. It's because he quit the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
And people don't tend to do that unless they have delusions of grandeur and want to form their own party of 8 people that dies immediately.
Yeah.
Or isn't really that well thought of in his own party. So, he's a dickhead, fuck him.
Fair enough. Let's move on, shall we? So... Yes, terrible news, bad things happening. As always, the tabloids and the TERFs, they've just not stopped. There's a pandemic on, but it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference to these people. They will just proceed with their nonsense from now until the end of time. So, fortunately, however, the trans community is a little bit different. There's a lot of stuff going on at the moment in the world, and we thought we'd highlight a bit of it. So to wash down that rather familiar and upsetting story, we've now got, coming up, 2 interviews with 2 amazing trans people who are actually helping, in the same way that TERFs don't. Now, as you might have all heard, things are quite tough for our community right now. Obviously, COVID-19 is wreaking havoc on everybody's lives, businesses, and mental and physical health. But there is also the approaching threat here in the UK of whatever Liz Truss is cooking up for trans equality. But in our community, there are many, many people looking to help, not just people that we know, Michelle and myself, but the whole of the UK. And Michelle had the wonderful pleasure of meeting up with some of them. So the first up is Jess in London, who is some kind of programming genius who has created something wonderful for the NHS. So let's play the tape.
Hey, Jess in London, how are you doing? You built something awesome, right?
I think so, yeah. I built an app, or I led a team to build an app for the NHS so that patients who are stuck inside of hospitals can talk with their loved ones at home. It was pretty wild. It was 12 days of build. It's been live for about 3 days, and it's been used by over 600 patients in a hospital in Northwest London, or 5 hospitals in Northwest London, to help connect people who are stuck inside with the people that they love at home.
Let's get into the guts of what the app does. So they download the app, and then what do they get out of it?
So from the NHS's side, the NHS is obviously, with coronavirus, got a ton of work going on. Everyone's very stretched on a normal basis, like as part of their normal jobs. So coronavirus kind of is only making it harder for them, unfortunately. So what would happen is you have a patient who's inside of hospital. Potentially they have coronavirus. Maybe they've just, like a normal patient, say they've broken their hip or something. And you'll have the family members ringing the hospital ward at like 10:30 in the morning going, give me an update. What did the doctor say about my loved one? Like, I need to know everything. And these poor NHS workers are just struggling with the amount of work that they have to do. When you're rushed to hospital at the moment, so like, for example, when I was rushed to hospital with coronavirus the other week, I had time to grab my phone, but I didn't have time to grab any chargers or any power bricks or anything like that. So once I got to 0% battery, I was all alone, and there was nothing I could do. And that sucks. That's not really great at all. And because I was a coronavirus patient, no one could help me. Like, there was nothing the ward staff could do. The NHS were fantastic, and they got me back on my feet really quickly. But in terms of like the technology side of things,
no one could come in and give you a charger or anything.
Right, yeah. So like no one's allowed to come and visit hospitals at the moment. I think they're only allowed for palliative care for cancer patients. So sort of like end of life scenarios for specific cancer patients, which is a horrible scenario to go through. But there are many other situations, say like a patient passing away from coronavirus, for example, or even just a patient who's gone in for a pretty hardcore surgery. Their loved ones outside are having to rely on these overstretched NHS staff members to get an update on how the people that they care about most in the world are doing. And like that, there is definitely a tech solution to that. And
that is the NHS Book a Virtual Visit app.
It was originally called Book of Virtual Visitations, which someone on Twitter pointed out to us. The word visitation sounds like you're getting visited from someone from the grave, like a ghost is there. And we were like, yeah, we shouldn't call it that. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a bad idea. And so you turned this thing around in 48 hours?
Yeah. So there's a lady called Sonia who runs 2 NHS trusts. And for people who don't know what trusts are, they're sort of this organisation that run a group of hospitals. So you might know sort of like X hospital or Y hospital, and it's sort of like the people, the humans that keep those hospitals running. And Sonia runs 2 trusts, which is probably like 6 or 7 hospitals in total. So it's like a lot. And she was saying, this is crazy. There must be a better way of doing this. She tweeted asking for help, and we replied, and we built it in 48 hours. It's pretty great.
That's incredible. Like, apparently I'm the only trans woman in the world who can't code, so what programmers do is magic to me. And I can't believe that like you made such an awesome thing in 48 hours. So that's been rolled out in hospitals in the Northwest Healthcare NHS Trust. Is it going to be seen wider around the country? Is it going to be spreading across, catching up with the virus itself?
So it's hot on the heels of coronavirus. So it's live in 5 hospitals at the moment, and it's been live for a few days now. It took a while just to kind of finesse everything, but we've done the app or the service for NHS Book a Virtual Visit. Has done over 600 virtual visitations in just the last few days. So those are conversations between kind of like parents and their children, for example. So say you go to hospital to give birth for the first time. You're there with your partner for the moment you give birth, and then your partner has to leave you immediately afterwards. So you're sort of in hospital alone. And if you're COVID positive, you're not allowed to talk or see or touch your baby because your baby might not have coronavirus. So we're facilitating that. We're facilitating chaplain services. So these religious people who are associated with hospitals in order to give things what's called last rites to patients. So patients before they pass away, you sort of have this religious individual who's there and says some nice words and does whatever they need to do. I get really emotional when I think about this because like these are over 600 conversations in just a few days that would not have happened without it. We're rolling out to another trust next week. So I've got another big week worth of work in front of me, and then hopefully another trust the week after that. But we've made sure that the source code for this app is open source. And for those who don't know what that means, it just means that anyone can see what we're doing. They can dive in and go, oh, I can help you out here. Or actually, I've got this really great idea that I can take it and go and use it for this other use case. So we're not doing it for profit. We're not some sort of like big, large corporation who's going, I can take more money from the NHS. Go check it out. Google NHS Book a Virtual Visit. And then add my name if nothing else comes up. Check it out. It's pretty cool.
And so this has been put together by Made Tech, is that right?
Correct, yeah. So I started at Made Tech a few weeks ago. This is my first project that I'm working on. I joined Made Tech, which is a public service consultancy. So they work with the government and different government departments and they help build stuff, which sounds kind of scary and creepy, but in reality just means you help the government be better, which is awesome. Like there's a bunch of stuff that the government does, and it can definitely be digitized. This being one example of that. Like, why do people have to go inside of hospitals to go and see their loved ones? Even when that is allowed after coronavirus goes away, that's still quite an antiquated way of doing it. Like, I personally live in London, and if I had to go and see a relative, say in the middle of the country somewhere, that would be a big trip for me to do, but it would be the only way of me seeing and really talking with them. And that doesn't make much sense. Built that. So it's built by Made Tech. And there was a team of like 6 people working on it in total, led by myself, and it's been pretty great. We actually launched it on the day that Liz Truss had some interesting comments about trans people, and it just felt like thanks Liz. It felt like a really interesting way of saying, like, the government is so big and there are so many people trying to do like amazing things inside of it, but there are so many people. There's like a small group of people who kind of want to work against that. And it was just interesting to see both of those things launch at the same time. It was kind of like, on one angle you have trans people are horrible and they need to be condemned and they can't go outside and they can't use toilets and all that sort of stuff. And on the other side, you have like, hey, I'm a trans woman and like, I want to build this thing because like patients inside of hospitals shouldn't die without seeing their families. And it was just, sharing some good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily that, like, I mean, this is probably the reality of things, but trans people shouldn't have to build amazing apps to justify being able to take a piss in public. But I think that's where we're at. And it's horrible that we're there. But very, very glad, Jess, that you are doing the important work. So if somebody is listening and they want to help out, add suggestions to the open source workflow, I hope those words are right, how could people do that?
Great question. So we have a GitHub repo that's open source, so you can see everything that the team are doing. It's called NHS Book a Virtual Visit. and it's under the Made Tech organization, MADE Tech. Or you can tweet me at Jessica London. The second O is a zero because I'm cool and hip. But yeah, either of those two work.
Cool. We'll put links in the description, so if you are a tech person who knows what a syntax is or what UX means, you can dive in and give a helping hand to an awesome thing. Jess in London, thank you very, very much for talking to me.
No worries, thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been talking to Jess for a little bit about various other things, because we've kind of got to know each other online in certain ways, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not really that intimidated most of the time by talking to people, but I was a little bit with Jess, because I'm the only trans woman in the world, it would feel like. I think you are also the only trans woman in the world who doesn't know how to code.
Yeah, I don't know how to code. My girlfriend knows how to code. But when you decide to transition and you get that whole character point redistribution screen where it comes up and says, congratulations, you've transitioned. Now you get to redistribute all your skill points that you've built up in your life so far. So Lexi put hers into coding and I went for music and art. So is that not how it works? Does everybody not get that screen?
No, I seem to put all my points into making hummus.
Nice. In fairness, that's... it's a bit of a left field skill, but there's just going to be that one particular quest that requires some perfectly homemade hummus, and you will nail it. Anyway, so the NHS book a virtual visit thing, which honestly, that's a nice direct name, isn't it? But that's a fantastic idea.
Yeah, I mean, like Jess said, just think of not just in the times of COVID-19, but going forward, because I know that I have family all over the country.
Mm.
And a lot of them are getting older, and if for some reason I can't get to them, something like this could open up the opportunity for me to, see them, to speak to them.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful idea, and it's currently in hospitals in the London North West University Healthcare and Hillingdon Hospitals Foundation Trust.
Again, another catchy name. Well done, NHS.
Yeah, I can't remember if that is two different trusts or one. That's genuinely what happened there. I don't know. But I know that it is in currently 5 hospitals.
Right.
And they are hoping to, after a long beta testing period, they're going to roll it out amongst more hospitals. And I could totally see this kind of thing going nationwide.
Yeah, it makes sense.
The vast majority of NHS patients are usually between 70 and 90. And so they may not be that up on Zoom or Skype or any of the other things. So if they can be provided with some kind of device that can get this done and helped out by any of the staff that happen to be on the wards, this could be an absolute fucking winner for everyone concerned.
Absolutely. So if you want a bit more information on how you can help out with the development and actually hear some from Jess herself, then we, of course, have a link in the description where you can find all the information. So moving on, finally, the amazing organisation Transactual has now launched a new website, which they hope will centre and share transgender voices, but also serve as a one-stop shop for accurate information about the issues facing our community, but also be there to dispel transphobic myths. So one central website repository of all of the actual truth would be a wonderful thing to be able to send to, for example, every single cis person that you know. So again, Michelle had a lovely chat with Chay, so let's play the tape.
Hey Chay, you made an awesome thing. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, I do. So Transactual have got a brand new website. For those of you who don't know, Transactual have been going since 2017 now, sharing facts about trans lives, trans rights, trans experiences, dispelling those myths and really trying to elevate trans people's voices so that we can, in some way, shape or form, get our voices heard. And it was time to go beyond social media. So we crowdfunded, we raised £910 thanks to some wonderful, wonderful people making donations. And we're ready to release a website. So Ida Hobbit, perfect day to be breaking the silence and releasing the Transactual website unto the world. There's a great definition of transphobia on there as well. It's really, really in depth and going beyond the nuance, going into the nuances and beyond the idea that transphobia is just smacking someone in the face. When we know there's more to it than that. Often cis people don't know there's more to it than that. So this is a real crowdsourced definition of what transphobia is, so that trans people can refer people to it, and then there's loads on the website. We're really chuffed with it, and it's very shiny and attractive as well, so that always helps.
I do remember many years ago, I went to Clinic Q to get my butt injection. That most trans women will understand what I mean when I say butt injection. To a lot of people, they have no idea. I get butt injections, people. Don't judge me.
No judgment here.
I found one of your leaflets sat there explaining what the GRA reform was about, and at that point, I knew you as a Twitter account that was pretty great, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is a real world thing. So tell us about what transsexual is. I think many people may know you from the Twitter, but they may not know about the other stuff that you're doing.
Basically, Transactual was set up as a response to all the transphobic nonsense in the press, and sort of talking about that we need to take back our own narrative and get the information out there that we want people to know, and finding a way to dispel all those myths, finding something to do with the anger as well. Because part of why I co-founded Transactual, because I was really angry at all this misinformation being spread about trans people and that we were being demonized. And a lot of this misinformation was around Gender Recognition Act, of course, and sort of the proposals to reform the Gender Recognition Act were what I think really triggered the sort of the reprisal of hostility towards trans people in the UK. So most of the work's been on social media. So there's Twitter, there's Facebook, but occasional paper-based activity, like you said, you saw the leaflet about Gender Recognition Act. That was another crowd-funded project. So way back when, we crowdfunded to create these fact sheets about the Gender Recognition Act, and enough money to be able to send them to local LGBT groups, trans groups, people that will go into Pride. So over that summer that now feels like a lifetime ago, when gender recognition consultation was open in England.
So long ago. But yeah, people were asking for us to send the leaflets, and because of the wonderful generosity of people donating to crowdfund, we were able to send those leaflets to people. It didn't cost them anything, and they could go to their local Pride event and hand them out and talk to people confidently about Gender Recognition Act reform. And it's all the work's grown from there, really. So grown from talking about the Gender Recognition Act, but now with the world being what it is, the real focus for this spring is lifting trans people's voices and, looking out for people, talking about self-care, because it's such a difficult time. And for trans people that are perhaps facing more barriers, either, not able to be themselves in the place that they live, or they found that they're on a waiting list that's essentially paused for the minute. I know I'm on a waiting list that was a year long, and now it's how long is a piece of string. And I think that's the case with a lot of people. So now it's about talking about that positivity, and also giving people the tools to advocate for trans rights and to talk about trans rights in a really constructive way, rather than being tempted to get into sort of like a confrontation on Twitter or something like that, which is just not healthy. You're transsexual and are what the trans started for very similar reasons, because we were very angry too. And sounds like it went a different way, as in we decided, right, we're going to talk to the community, and you have taken we're going to get the information out to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It sounds like this is your new website is a resource that all of our listeners should send to their cisgender friends. Is that right?
Yeah, but there's loads on there for trans people as well. So there's a whole... we have a big directory that we use to store our research and information that sort of we've come across over the years. So the website's got a huge directory of, the graphics that Transactual are known for on social media, but also directory of articles. There's a video directory of really cool TEDx talks, directory of information on research, and then there's stuff on what are my employment rights, what about access to healthcare, all of that. So it's a real community resource, and that's something really important. It was the money for it was raised by the community, and it's very much a resource for the community, but it's very useful for cis people too, or for trans people to share with cis people.
Yeah, I was looking at this the website last night, and I was just like, one, it's really pretty. It's got the thing where you scroll and the images will just appear, like from a cloud or something. They'll fade in, and it's very beautiful. But also the content is very, 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 very good too. Chay, where can people find this wonderful resource you have made, and also where can people find more about Transactual across the interwebs?
Oh, the best place is www.transactual.org.uk. On Twitter, @transactualuk, and Facebook, it's Transactual UK. But go to the website, and all the social links are on there as well.
Fantastic. Chay, thank you for making this wonderful thing, and stay safe in the dystopian nightmare land we're all living in.
Yeah, thank you, and you too.
So I think this is something that I think people have tried to do before, but they've not really taken off in the way that I would have liked. But I have a good feeling about this one, because the website transactual.org.uk is so pretty, so pristine. All the information is on point and really easy to digest for everyone from the cis person who doesn't know anything, right the way up to the trans people who are some kind of elder gods of the community, and everyone in between. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and this is not exactly a big money spinner, because, you know, coming out and putting up a website, I mean, they had to get crowdfunding for it, like Chay said. This is not exactly going to be a moneymaker. This is very much a passion project that came from seeing the landscape and being like, no. And there's a lot of similarities between how this podcast, Discord, website empire that you and I have built sort of started out of a sense of frustration of just like, everyone is so bad on trans issues. We've got to put this record straight.
That's exactly what it was as well. Like, so the motivation is, I can absolutely understand that. Yeah,
I mean, obviously follow Transactual and go to their website, and follow them all on the social medias. Go to the link sheet and press subscribe, follow, do the internet stuff. You all know what the internet is and what you do there. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, all the other stuff that YouTubers say at the end of their videos, but do that with Transactual.
Yes, that'll be good. And so that's some people actually just taking the time for, non-monetary reasons to do something helpful, unlike certain tabloids and hate groups we could think of. There's like so many projects now that are being run by the trans community. Everyone's kind of pulling together in heavy weather because of COVID-19. But Isolation Arts Collective, was it? That, we spoke to somebody a few weeks ago. There's so many people starting out these, let's work together and share information and, build community and stuff. Like, there's so many examples of the trans community just kind of doing that right now. And it's that, if nothing else, is like quite good to see.
Yeah, it is a wonderful thing. I've said this before, but I will say it again. I love our fucking community. No, wait, I'm going to rephrase that because it sounds like I love our community that is about fucking. I love our community. I genuinely think that we've got some of the best people who've ever lived in it because of stuff like this. People in their own time trying to make things better for others with no expectation of reward or even a thanks. Because, Chay is probably going to get a lot of crap from various bad uns if what happened to me is anything to go by. When a trans person tries to do something, they are painting a target on their back, but Shay's doing it anyway because he is fucking fearless. And the same with Jess.
Yep.
Like, ran a whole team of coding magicians, and coding is magic to me, because how do you make words turn into a video game? I don't understand it. It's magic. But they built a thing that is going to help, has already helped 600 people. And it's going to help so many more. It could help thousands of people in such a wonderful way. So I'm feeling incredibly proud of the trans community right now. I may have a little cry later. A little joy cry.
Yeah. All right. So
now we're going to come to our meat, and this is a very special meat because this is our 50th episode of the podcast.
50.
Yeah, we've been going for pretty much 2 years.
You know, sometimes it seems like I've been doing this forever, and sometimes it seems like we started yesterday. So, you know.
Yeah, I can't imagine my life without it at this point. I don't even know what the hell I was doing all day. Oh, wait, Fallout 4.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I was doing all day.
That's what you were doing all day. Fair enough, yeah. Well, I was doing a TV show before this, and then that stopped, and then you were like, "Ooh, let's start a podcast." And I was like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. So here we are.
Yeah, like, you are the only person here with, like, professional broadcasting experience, and I think that sometimes that shows because you're very eloquent, you make your point clearly, and I do this, blah, 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 blah.
I think we've both been known to do a bit of... So don't worry about that. Like, you know, it depends on the day, doesn't it? So...
Yeah.
But for this particular meet, since we are aware of the circumstances and everything, our initial plan for the 50th episode is that we would both get drunk. And, however, unfortunately, at the moment, I am on medication, which means I cannot drink alcohol. And I'm also being advised not to drink fizzy drinks or caffeine either. And so, honestly, at the moment, it is just fruit juice, and I am so bored. But, quite specifically, cannot get drunk, or my stomach will bleed. So, we thought we would do something that is still reasonably light and a bit silly, but not involving any substances.
Well, speak for yourself. I did just buy some clothes glue, so I am ready to go.
Jesus. You're not my supervisor! So, well, what did we think that we would do in lieu of boozy silliness?
Well, it's sort of grown from the boozy silliness, because I thought that we were going to do some kind of drinking game. But instead, I basically came up with a whole bunch of questions that I have. At first, I was looking for a really fancy app that would be able to draw things out at random, like from a digital hat. Then I realised that I have a former bag of peanuts that would be a suitable receptacle for a bunch of questions written on paper. So here is my former bag of peanuts.
That is now
a
bag full of random questions. A couple of these were provided by other humans, or are they all just random?
Basically, last night I wrote out about 100 questions on a bit of paper, varying in quality. I don't think we're going to get through anywhere near all of them, and some of them are going to be terrible. But these are all based on the rough theme of the last 2 years, what we have experienced, what we have seen, and what we hope for the future may be. I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going to happen here.
Yeah. Well, let's find out.
Yeah, I'm just going to draw something out. So... Right. Scariest guest experience.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I think that one's kind of on you, because you've actually physically met most of the guests, and most of the time on the other end, I'm on the other end of the microphone. I mean, I guess there was Husk, who, like, you know, we sat down and shared a pair of earphones in my kitchen to do the music special, which wasn't scary, but it was a bit like, you know, I want Husk to like me and think I'm cool. So... I mean, do you have one?
I actually do. And, well, I had two. And it's from our Cis Ally special last year.
Ah, yes.
When I was supposed to interview Oliver Thorne from Philosophy Tube.
Yes.
Who is very, very cool. Been a big fan for a very long time. And he got held up at the post office, which meant that he was a little late. But I wasn't aware of that because I didn't have his number or anything. I basically had, like, his Skype contact and his email address that everyone has because it's the bottom of every YouTube video. So I was just like, is he coming? Do I email him? I don't want to sound needy, but also, if he's not coming, I've told a whole bunch of my friends that this is happening, and I'm going to look very foolish. What the hell am I going to do? What the hell am I going to do? But then he immediately, well, not immediately, eventually he sent a message to me, was just like, I'm sorry I got held up at the post office. And then he came back, and then we had a wonderful chat that went on for about 45 minutes. But for a bit there, I was just like, this is probably the biggest guest we've ever had at that point. And he's gone. Did I say something? Because I don't think I mentioned this enough, but I have a condition called ADHD that comes with a side.
Do you?
I do. It comes up at least once an episode. It's still relatively new to me. as a thing. I'm still processing. But basically, it comes with a thing called rejection-sensitive dysphoria, which means that on some level, I'm always scared of people I like running away because of something I've done. I think everyone has this to a certain extent, but for people with ADHD, it tends to be more severe. And even though me and Mr. Thorne had wonderful conversations over email and stuff and really got on, and, you know, I could not stop thinking, oh my god, I have somehow pissed off the cool person. And that was just a whirlwind of emotions all around that. So, yeah, that's probably my scariest one. The other one, not quite as exciting, just talking to Adam Conover, who I've been a huge fan of for about a decade beforehand, was astonished that he even saw my message on Twitter.
Yeah.
And just sat there talking to him, just being like, all right, I now have to like be a professional cool person or like pretend that he's just a normal person to me. I mean, he is just a normal guy, but you know, I'm a fan. Fake. And suddenly it's like, okay, I have to basically put at the forefront of my mind Adam Conover taking a shit somewhere.
So
there's lots of that was true. I was genuinely picturing Adam Conover taking a shit to try and keep my brain from freaking out and putting him on a pedestal.
Right, cool, good. Next question.
All right, fine. All right. What was the worst news story that we've ever done, in your opinion?
In a sense, it's all been one long news story, hasn't it? And it's terrifying because it's still ongoing. So I think obviously the stuff quite recently with Liz Truss has made me more, I don't want to say fearful, but a little bit more uneasy than any of the stuff that the government's done on trans issues in my lifetime. And in fact, on previous occasions, I've been really optimistic about it. And now it's just like, well, that was some misplaced optimism, wasn't it? So, but then having said that, I mean, that's a bit of a selfish way of thinking about it, because that's, you know, that's the scariest one because that personally affects me. But then we've spoken to other people in other countries, haven't we? And Brazil and Hungary, and the situation there makes this look like a walk in the park or something, you know, and that is just, although it's not directly affecting my life and me and whatever, is intellectually terrifying because it's like, holy shit, there are people just like me having to deal with such horrible repression, essentially, and worse. So
I think the worst story I ever had to do was when I got a tip that there was a story breaking about GRA reform being kicked just after like COVID's lockdown had started, and I put out a mini episode, and that was the worst news story ever because one, it turned out to be kind of wrong because Liz Truss came out of nowhere with her astonishing intentions for GRA reform, but also because I was so thoroughly fucking naive in that. I'm going to put it out there, I was horribly wrong because I said in that there will be no movement on trans issues for the next year. It's all going to be COVID-19. Not even the TERFs are going to bother with trans stuff because most TERFs are older. They're in the danger zone. And also, women who they claim to care about so much are going to be the people that are hit the worst by this, and that turned out to be true. But I thought, naively, that they would be trying to do something about it. They would maybe be trying to raise money for shelters, refuges, maybe trying to get onto the government about certain other issues, or, if nothing else, being scared for their family. But it turned out I was horribly wrong.
Yeah.
Next question?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Weirdest thing that you have learned since starting this ridiculous podcast?
Well, God, which one's the weirdest?
I'm trying to think, and I don't know. I really should have made some notes for each one, but that would have been cheating. The whole point of this is to be taking by surprise.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is spontaneous us without a script.
Sorry, what was the question again? Weirdest thing that I've learned. Okay. So, I mean, there's been lots of stuff that I've learned. So, differences between court systems, for example, right? And I know that's not a weird thing particularly, but I'm just trying to play for time while I think of something else. But, you know, all the stuff that we've learned about the kind of differences in terms of Supreme Courts and how district courts work in America and so on, which to you and I here in the UK can look a bit weird. But then I would imagine if this podcast was What the Trans, and I'm Ashleigh Talbot, and I'm Michelle O'Toole, and they were looking at it from the other side of the Atlantic, then they probably think that our court system is a bit weird. So, it is not for me to judge, perhaps.
Well, our court system, they all wear wigs.
They do, yeah.
That's strange.
It is, yeah. But, tradition.
So yeah, the weirdest thing I learned, which is related to all of the court stuff that we've had to learn, or all of the different chambers and stuff, it is related, is when I was doing the deep dive into the Supreme Court. The Aimee Stephens case, it turns out.
Right.
And I was reading all of the briefs submitted by interested parties. Some of them are called amicus briefs, some of them are called other kinds of briefs. It's a whole thing. But the weirdest one for me, and this is mostly weird because of my own internal biases, was when I was reading through all of them, and pretty much all of the religious organisations were Christian and very much against trans equality, which is of no surprise. But then I found a Jewish group who I was like, okay, Jewish people, on the whole, tend to be down with LGBT rights in particular, across the board in America at the very least. In other parts of the world, not so much, but in America, the liberal, reformist Jewish person, that is the majority of Jewish people in the States, as I understand it. So to my utter horror, when I opened it up and just saw that, this is just a Jewish version of the Christian hate groups. It's exactly the same.
Yay.
But then I scrolled down further and saw, I saw the word Islam and was like, okay, this is going to follow the old thing. And maybe some subtle Islamophobia in my own brain was just like, this is going to be a shit show. But then I opened it. It turned out to be like the Muslim lawyers of New York who were coming out in favour of trans equality. I mean, that was weird for me because I was suddenly faced with my own internal biases. It's just like, 100% of the Muslim organisations that submitted to this case, this huge case, were supportive of trans people. 100% of all of the things sent by Jewish organisations were not. And if I had to put money on which way it would have gone before, from the more ignorant version of me from the past, I would have done the other way. So I guess the weird thing about that was I had to face some of my own internal prejudices and have a think.
Good thing to be reminded of, I suppose, isn't it? It's like, oh, wow, yes, sometimes the world surprises you. And sometimes it's nice and sometimes not.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very happy with that because the amount of Islamophobic shit that's in the press all the time. And I genuinely thought that I was kind of immune to it because, I've made the effort to actually try and understand what the Islamic religion is about and listen to as many Muslim voices as I could. So I thought I'd be immune from that kind of thing. But it turned out, no. Toxicity around religion, race and all of that can creep up on you in surprising...
Gets in your head.
I hope you learned something from that. Apologies to anyone apologies for my ignorance. That admittedly was only in my own head and in conversations with you at the time, until now, where I've broadcasted it to everyone.
Indeed.
But as a learning exercise, I hope. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. Okay. What is your best personal achievement whilst doing this show? And I think I totally stole this from a job evaluation I did years ago.
Nice. Well, there was Andy Burnham, wasn't there? That was an interesting experience doing that.
Yeah, you made that happen too. Because usually, the division of labour is that I'm kind of chasing after people all the time. But this is one of the times where you absolutely... that would never have happened without you.
I mean, yeah, mostly because I could just sort of breeze in and go, hi, can I just... Because, so this was the interview where we spoke to Andy Burnham at Sparkle, which is an event in Manchester that I've been going to for absolutely years, obviously. There's a whole thing about the name of it and blah, 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 which I've just chosen to ignore for the purposes of this segment. But Andy Burnham spoke at the one last year, and we interviewed him as he came off stage. And interestingly enough, we were introduced by one of the Sparkle Press people to Andy Burnham as Michelle and Ashleigh from What the Trends, an influential podcast. And we were just like, what? It's influential? What are you on about? So, yeah, that was quite an interesting one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I will always remember, you and me looking at each other during that.
Yes.
When he really, really wanted to get in there that he did not like anti-Semitism. And, I mean, that was a very important issue and still is in the Labour Party. We hope to cover it very, very soon once we find the right people to do it. But yeah, like at that time, it was a big thing in the news, and it was very obvious that he wanted to make it very clear how he felt about that to any microphone, even to two, like, bedraggled, half drunk, brightly coloured hair trans women standing in the middle of a field. And I just thought, like, that is such a wonderful moment right there to sort of see how the professional politician works.
Yeah. He was shorter than I expected as well.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I don't know what it is. Some people you see on TV, you expect them to be like 8 feet tall and they're not, and vice versa. I don't understand. Trying to, like, hope that more positive questions would come out has presented a different problem where I don't want it to sound like I'm, basically going to town on myself. But I think the best thing I ever did on this podcast was at Pride in London. I was watching Billy Porter with my friend Diana.
Yeah.
Hi, Diana, if you're listening. And suddenly I got hit with this ridiculous idea, and I turned to Diana and said, right, I'm going to try something. I don't know how long it's going to take. I cannot promise you I'll be back anytime soon, but I have to get this done. And so Billy Porter is a performer, actor, singer, all-round amazing man. You Google his name, he will come up. He is a regular guest at the Oscars, wearing the best stuff ever. He is one of the stars of one of the best shows ever made, Pose, which is all about the ballroom scene in New York, if you aren't aware. Billy Porter, big fucking star. He was there headlining Pride in London. And I decided I'm going to go backstage and interview him. So I ran back, and the security guy was there, and I was just like, hey, I'm media, and showed him my media wristband, which did not give me backstage access. And I was just like, I'd really love to speak to Billy Porter. And the security guy was like, well, your media pass won't let you in. And I was like, oh, it'll just be for a minute. And it'll make my life if you do this. And he was like, all right, I'll go ask. And he did. And it worked. And I awkwardly turned around to the security guard saying, are you a hugger? And he was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I want to give you a hug right now. And he was like, just go backstage. So I did. And there was Billy Porter, who was like 6.5 feet tall, far taller than I would expect, because for some reason, when he's playing Pray Tell on Pose, he's always seems shorter for some reason.
Well, maybe he had heels on. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know if he did, but I was too busy looking at him just going like, fuck me, that's Billy Porter, all right. And then Billy Porter sat down next to me in a little tent. I had 2 minutes. I got the interview, and also got him to do that thing that opens every show. Because that's Billy Porter. That's actually Billy Porter opening our show all the time. The only cis man in the world who would even come close to being allowed to do that because of everything he's done for the trans community. And also, I was astonished. And that is something that I regularly think about if I need to cheer myself up. Just like, I had this ridiculous idea that should never have worked. And somehow it did.
Yeah.
Out of blind luck. Mostly.
If you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, and that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned from doing this podcast. You don't ask, you don't get, because usually when we've done something ridiculous, it's because one of us has asked.
Yeah, it's just...
And then it happens.
It just sort of worked out, yeah, exactly.
All right, let's wrap this up with one final question.
All righty.
Surprisingly fitting, considering this is our last one. I don't think I could have planned this better. Where do you want the podcast to go in the future?
Ooh, well, that's... I have no idea. I actually don't. And I guess that's the nice thing about the whole new media thing, isn't it? Because we've had people say to us, oh, you should do YouTube content, or you should start doing Twitch, or you should do this and that and the other. And there's lots of different directions that we could theoretically do stuff to, quote unquote, build the brand. But we started it off, as we've made mention of, because we were so sort of frustrated with the mainstream news media. So rather than... I think if there's a part of this that should continue in any way, it still has to be that kind of fact-checking, debunking, being slightly bitchy about the tabloids, the trans friends that you never knew you needed kind of vibe. I would like the spirit of the show to remain, even as it hopefully evolves into far greater things over the next few years.
Yeah, I had no expectations going into this ridiculous thing that we did. I was like, okay, we're going to get maybe 50 listeners, and 45 of them will be Ashleigh's friends. And the other 5 will be my mum, who downloads it on 5 different devices. But then suddenly it started to grow in ways that I never expected. And suddenly we have last I checked, last episode did 2,000 downloads, individual downloads. And that's not including YouTube or streams or anything. That's just downloads to people's phones.
That's easily 1,998 more than I thought we'd ever get.
I know, right? Like, I mean, in the grand scheme of podcast numbers, that is nothing. But to me, that is an absurd amount of people that are listened to, like me. Like, you were probably making those kind of numbers when you were doing the TV thing, but not me. I did some stuff at Pink News that got, like, out there. I did some articles that got in the millions, literally. Not usually the ones I wanted to. Like, I did one about Jennifer Lawrence that was, like, in the top 5 most read that year, and wasn't exactly the one I would have chosen, because I did a lot of stuff about GRA reform and stuff back then. But anyway, so I honestly don't know how to answer this, to put it bluntly. I have no idea where I would like this to go, because right now it's like we lit a fuse for a thing, and not the biggest firework in the world, but it's still a firework that went off.
And ignited several others along the way, by the look of it, essentially. So, yeah, it's a funny one. You start off with something with literally no expectations, and it becomes a bit strange to then develop some, because like, well, let's just see how it goes. And it is what we're doing to an extent, but yes, we'll see where we end up. I'm excited to see what happens to us next.
Yeah, like, I mean, when it comes to recognition, you or I are not famous. That is the truth of it. We can walk around in our lives and never be noticed ever. And I like that. But there are some times where you or I will go somewhere and we will see someone who is very excited when they clock who we are.
Yes, that has happened actually, hasn't it? And like, it is still weird when it happens, because when I was doing the television thing, that was happening, right? Not loads, because I was presenting like a LGBT specific news show on a channel which went out only in Manchester. So, it was a bit niche, but there was still, over the course of time I was doing it, a dozen or so people who legit clocked me on the street. Like, oh my God, you're Ashleigh Talbot, aren't you? I was like, yes, I am. God, this is weird. And it's still weird when it's someone who recognises me once I've started talking. I was like, hang on a minute, I know that voice. You're on a podcast, aren't you? It's like, yes, darling. So...
But yeah, like, when it comes to what I hope to happen in the future, I mean, it's always lovely. It really is. And when somebody, like, is really happy to see you. And there's been some times where people, like, I've talked to them online or something, and they admit that, like, they're starstruck, which is absurd.
That is weird.
I mean, I get it. You hear someone and you like the cut of their jib, and then you're finally talking to them after a long time. I've had that same feeling when talking to a lot of the people I've been looking to get interviews with on the show.
Of course, yeah.
But I think in the future, I would very much like something to happen as a result of the podcast that's not based around me. Not that I'm not incredibly grateful, and it is so much fun when people are really happy to see you. I love it. I love talking to people who listen to the show. I fucking love it. It gives me life. But I would like to see in the future that we do something that makes something happen in a big way. That's kind of where I would like to see it go. Like, we report on a thing, and then that in itself becomes part of something that makes things better.
Yeah.
Rather than it be more about me. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I think I agree, absolutely, that it would be wonderful to see something that we've done start something else, a story or whatever, or us putting an angle on something that other people haven't thought of. And, well, actually, maybe I've been thinking wrong, but yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good note to start wrapping these up on. Yes, I reckon so. Thank you, my old former bag of peanuts, for
your sterling service.
A bunch of questions. We will now... That's me throwing it in the bin. Done. Although maybe I should save them for next year. No, fuck it. Let's just end the show. I want to thank everyone for making the last 2 years so fucking fun and interesting, and genuinely don't imagine doing anything else with my life. So I guess that's my way of saying, in some form, there's going to be some version of the show carrying on until I pop my clogs at the very least. Hopefully I'm not going to be popping my clogs anytime soon. I want to announce this year's Cis Ally special.
And it's a fun one.
Yeah, it really is. Put out a tweet announcing our first guest, who is the mighty Owen Jones from The Guardian.
Indeedy. You'll actually be hearing my voice, even in my absence, when that episode goes out, because it was me that did the interview. So I will sort of be there, but Ashleigh from the past.
And I gotta say, Ashleigh from the past fucking nailed it. It was a lovely, fun interview that has been edited now. So, yeah, that is ready to go. Also appearing on the episode is Scottish actor and all-round amazing ally David Paisley. You may know him from BBC Scotland's River City or the BBC's Holby City, but he may be more known for his wonderful promise to send out nude pictures of himself to everyone who filled in the Scottish GRA consultation.
Yeah.
Which meant that he ended up sending out thousands and thousands of pictures of himself in the buff for trans rights. He has also been on the front line of fighting against the LGB Alliance, and we had a lovely chat that went on for far longer than we both intended, because it turned out we got on really well, and he's a lovely guy, and we had such a lovely laugh. Wonderful. So, yeah. David Paisley, that is a really good interview. Also, I talked to Grace Petrie, folk singer, Labour supporter, and all-round awesome person. She has also given us permission to use one of her songs in the episode.
Yes! Awesome.
So if you're a Grace Petrie fan, check that out. And if you're not, what the fuck is wrong with you? Get on this next week and listen to her stuff. And finally, I will be talking to comedian and all-round trans ally Josie Long. Josie Long has been a mainstay of the UK comedy scene for many, many, many years. I mean, she's not that old. It makes it sound like she's ancient, but she's really not. She's like the same age as me, pretty much. But yeah, she has done sold-out tours. She has won awards. She has done Edinburgh Fringe a million times. She has sold out theatres. She is a very, very creative, wonderful person who is not afraid to call out assholes who are dicks to trans people all the time. Which, if you've seen the comedy community, a surprising amount of them don't really like trans people that much. So when she speaks out, it is definitely at her own cost. And there may be more. I've got some pokers in the fire. Let's see who else I can get before the deadline of the night before it goes out.
Alrighty. So, yeah. Absolutely.
But yeah, that's going to be coming out on the 26th of May. Cis Allies special is usually, we do it once a year. The idea is that we thank all of the amazing Cis Allies who help us out. But we try to keep it to a limit to only once a year, because this is very much a trans voices first podcast and media enterprise. But one time a year, it is really nice for people who are alone in their houses, wherever they are, especially in lockdown, who may have the impression that cis people fucking hate them, to hear from a bunch of really cool ones to be like, no, we got your back. So if you need some solidarity from some awesome allies, get on the fucking download, subscribe to this thing, and do the internet stuff.
Lovely. Yes.
And on that, let's end this show. If you liked what you heard, you should check us out on social media, that thing that you do all the time that ruins your day. So maybe stop doing that. But before you do stop doing that, check us out on social media. You can get us on Twitter, @WhatTheTrans, on Instagram, @WhatTheTrans. You can get us on Facebook, /WhatTheTrans. We are all over the social medias.
Indeedy. We're also have a shiny website, which is whatthetrans.com. And, of course, we have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/whatthetrans. Now, we recognise that you're broke, we're broke, but if you're slightly less broke, you can potentially help the show by throwing some money at us on Patreon. Or you can leave a review on whatever platform you're listening to this on and spread the word about the show.
Yeah, spread us. Wash your hands, don't spread COVID-19, but spread us.
Yes, like we're a delicious cheese spread onto some delicious homemade bread. Spread us like that.
I don't know if we're as good as cheese, but we're definitely better than COVID-19.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's the show. See you next time. Bye-bye.
This episode of What the Trans was presented by Ashleigh Talbot and Michelle O'Toole, having been written and researched by Michelle O'Toole.
And this podcast was produced by Joe Ross Barrett and edited by myself, Michelle O'Toole, and Joe Ross Barrett.
And, of course, a thank you to our wonderful Patreons, Alexandra Lilly,
Anthony Pena,
April Heller,
Becky Scott Fairley,
Bernard's Pink Jellybean,
Cassius Adair,
Chris Hubley,
Claire Scott,
Derek Victor,
Desiree Markland,
Elliot McVeigh,
Emma Doyle,
Ian Coomber,
Rowan Littlejohns,
Karakan 12,
Catherine,
Laker,
Lauren O'Nions,
Lewis Brown,
Lenos,
Maddie Bell,
Matt Reynolds,
Melissa Brooks,
Mike Dickinson,
Mina,
Molly,
Patreon user,
so mysterious, Samantha Alice Raven,
Sarah Bedful of Dogs Halliwell,
and Sophie Lewis. Thank you all so much for your contributions. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.